Okay, we are continuing on from the last video where we were talking about functions. In this video, we're going to expand upon functions, and we're going to talk about the opening and closing parenthesis. Now, as I said in the last video, this is where we pass data or information into our function, and then we can do whatever we want with that data. We can multiply it, we can subtract it, we can divide it. Anything is open game. And so let's actually change our function name because we're going to add some data in this function. So let's change this to add something so it's a little bit more relevant. And then we're going to create the parameters that we're going to use. Now, these are called parameters, but they're actually variables because they will actually hold the data that gets used by our function. The only difference is we don't use the var keyword. We can actually just write out the name of a variable. I like to think of it more as a placeholder. It's kind of a temporary placeholder where it just holds the data that gets passed into our function. And then, as I said, our statements will work against whatever data the variables in this parenthesis are holding. So we're going to do multiple parameters here. Now, you can do one parameter, you can do two parameters, you can do as many parameters as you want. You just have to put a comma between each parameter or variable. So let's call our first variable num because it is going to be a number, and we will call the second variable str because that is going to hold a string. And as I said, you could name this anything you want. It doesn't matter. You could have this 100 characters if you wanted. It does not matter. But I like to make the variable name somewhat relevant to whatever data or information it is holding. Now we'll pass in data when we call our function down here. But for now, let's go ahead and put some statements into our function. Let's get rid of this comment. And then what we're going to do is create a variable inside our function, and we're just going to simply call that add. And then we're going to say that is equal to num plus str, and then of course a semicolon. So basically this variable will add up these two variables in our parenthesis and whatever data is stored in them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to alert, and we're just going to alert on the variable name. And that, of course, is add. So we just put add in there. And now we need to actually call our function down here. And so again, this is where we pass in data to our function. So we need to obviously change the function to add something because this is the function we're calling. And let's first pass in a number because that's the first variable that we have up here for a number. And let's pass in 455. And then we need a comma, and let's pass in a string now, and we'll pass in the string programs to write. Now I have a space here because if we don't put this space here, the output would put the word programs right next to 45, and we want this to read more like a sentence. So that's why I put the space here. So again, this number is going to equate to this variable, and the variable str is going to hold this string for us. And then we have a variable inside our function that's going to add our two variables, and then we're going to, of course, alert on that variable, which of course we'll see when we open up our browser. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's flip over to our web page that references our JavaScript file, and let's run this in Chrome. And there you can see we get our sentence 455 programs to write, and we'll hit OK to that. Now, I want to point out that this example has everything coming in. We are sending data into our function, but we can also return values from our function as well. And we'll talk about that in the next video. See you guys then.